Welcome to worship with the Unitarian Universalist Community of Charlotte. I'm Jay Leach, minister, and my pronouns are he, him. And I'll go ahead and warn you that this utter embarrassment of riches, which is the musical experience today, is going to be interrupted from time to time with words. And don't worry, even though some of them do get long, we will always get back to the music, so hang in with us. Welcome to an opportunity, to an experience, a time to enter with an open mind, an open heart, an open soul. Today we gather hearing all about us in the larger community, the echo of ancient sacred stories. Of Jews telling of their Passover, the liberation story of emancipation. Of Christians telling of their Easter, a story of new life with today a strange twist. Today we imagine that these sacred myths might hold truths for us. We imagine. We imagine. And when words fail us as they do, we will sing, we will make and hear music, we will listen for life's tenacious invitations there. Welcome to those of you who are watching outside of this room. Pause a moment now, go to our public Facebook page. You'll find there a post that is welcoming you to this service, and respond with your own comment of greeting. If you are in this room and you have a phone that has been silenced, join those in commenting on Facebook, connecting across formats in what is a hybrid service. I'm glad that you are here. Your presence makes a difference. If we didn't know that before these past 200 years, we certainly know it now. Your presence makes a difference. So take a moment now and greet those around you, especially any who may be our guests on this day. Welcome.
which we recall the old stories, we light the flame. For Passover, which reminds us of the courage and strength of those seeking freedom in the past, we light the flame. For Easter, which reminds us that love is our greatest challenge, we light the flame. For gathering today in this sacred space, we light the flame. For the opportunity to be together as a community, to remember the past, to plan for our future, to be alive in our present.
In 1974, Episcopalians were still uncertain about whether women could really be priests. They debated the matter. It's been this way for so long. It's how we've known it. Why should we change now? They voted, deliberated, voted again. And still they were uncertain, should women be allowed to be priests? In 1974, 3 retired priests took matters into their own hands, and they gathered 11 women, now known as the Philadelphia 11, and they conducted a clandestine ordination service, and from then on, women have been priests in the Episcopal Church. That's sometimes how it has to happen. One of those women grew up just a few blocks from here, Carter Hayward, who some of you may recognize by name. Another is Ala Renee Bossart. From her poem, Passover Remembered. Pack nothing. Bring only your determination to serve and your willingness to be free. Don't wait for the bread to rise. Take nourishment for the journey, but eat standing. Be ready to move at a moment's notice. Do not hesitate to leave your old ways behind. Do not hesitate to leave your old ways behind. Fear, silence, submission. Only surrender to the need of the time to love justice and walk humbly with your God. Do not take time to explain to the neighbors. Tell only a few trusted friends and family members, then begin quickly. Begin quickly before you have time to sink back into the old slavery. Set out. Set out in the dark. I've been in some churches on Easter Sunday morning where people wouldn't have been in the seats listening to that song. Whew. In 1999, the BBC's Radio 2 conducted a poll seeking the opinion of songwriters, disc jockeys, and listeners, considering also radio airplay and sales figures. It was voted the best song of the 20th century. A year later, VH1 charted the MTV and Rolling Stone 100 Greatest Pop Songs. Again, it came out on top. Guinness declares it the most covered song ever written, with more than 1,600 recorded versions. So what do you think they claimed was the best song of the 20th century, most covered song of all time? We missed a chance to do the drum roll. I'm sorry. Yesterday, written by Paul McCartney and released on the Beatles' 1965 recording, Help. Is anyone here or anyone who's watching who doesn't know those melancholic lyrics? Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, I believe in yesterday. It's the mournful lament of a man longing to go back to how things were. A man, now Sir Paul McCartney, who was just 23 years old when Yesterday was released. German theologian Dorothy Searle offers a Passover poem with that very same sentiment. When Israel departed from Egypt, when oppression came to an end, when they refused to be exploited any longer, when they got rid of the slave drivers, security became a thing of the past. Things got tough. Consumer goods were scarce. The people grumble. Would to God we had died in the land of Egypt when we sat by the flesh pots and when we did eat bread to the full, for you have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill the whole assembly with hunger. The people grumble, if only we had some meat. Remember the fish we ate in Egypt for free, the cucumbers, melons, onions, garlic. Now all we ever get is manna. Desert dirge is an ancient version of yesterday. In this myth, they finally escaped enslavement to the Egyptians. They found their miraculous way through the sea. But just days into their journey, they grumble. The people grumble. Why can't we go back? Easier, my friend and colleague, poet Lynn Unger writes, easier to have died in Egypt or stayed there a slave, pretending there was safety in the old familiar. Easier pretending. Isn't that what nostalgia always offers? The easier pathway entered by pretending. The way back marked by imagining it was better yesterday. The Greek word for return, writer Milan Kundera explains this. Nostros, algos, he says, means suffering. So nostalgia is the suffering caused by an unappeased yearning to return. And always the feeling comes that it was better then, whatever it was, says poet Charles Wright. The conservative New York Times columnist
Ross Douthat writes with some frequency about it being better than, a value judgment for him often informed by religion. He recently declared that order in America, that's important to what he's saying, order in America long relied on Protestant Christianity, and then expanding to a more ecumenical but still a biblically rooted vision. And Douthat's rose-colored remembering from the 19th century through the civil rights era, this shared worldview supplied not just a generic unity, but a constant moral touchstone for would-be reformers. Alas, we've been taken off into the wilderness, left, he writes, with a spiritual competition between an ascendant wokeness and a resentful Christian nationalism, which he bemoans isn't likely to supply unity or solidarity to anyone. His is a highly intelligent, journalistic version, not just of yesterday, but of another song covered by everyone from Mahalia Jackson to Johnny Cash. Give me that old-time religion. That one, as you may recall, also intones nostalgia with the repeated longing for a return to some prior version of religion. If it was good enough for those who came before, good enough for those of our history and heritage, well then, it's good enough for me. Douthat is hardly alone, has company on both the right and the left, both in and outside of religion. It was better, closer to the way it's supposed to be back then. Why did things change? Why did we head out into this uncharted desert? Why are we following those without sufficient appreciation for the ways we've always liked things to be? In Dorothy Silla's words, we've got to decide what we want, comrades. The supermarkets of Egypt or the march through the desert. 40 years, permanent revolution. As a young minister, I developed a close relationship with a member of the congregation where I was then serving. Sid was a prominent academic, an acclaimed scientist, a man of immense intellect and heart. We'd meet for breakfast regularly, the hearty fare, but a backdrop for our heartier conversations. I recall vividly our discussion about a particular social ill. Having heard my rather radical position, he calmly explained how aging would temper such stances. Time's passage would wear down my sharp edges, moderate my perspective. It was, I now see, his effort to initiate me early on into the older white man's club. A club in which I now somehow find myself a member. This wonderful man died last year, just months after his wife, whom I also love deeply. Alas, Sid did not live to see his prediction come true. Our last conversation left him with his head still shaking, still waiting for me to join him in moderation. I still don't want to go back to anywhere, to any prior era, to any old-time religion, to any metaphorical Egypt proffering safety or supermarkets. I love history. I think often about the way it shapes us. I join those in wishing that we'd actually be honest about history. But most of you know this by now. I'm less interested in burnishing the statues of the past than in building the path toward a more just future. I'm less inspired by the invitation to join with those who are fighting against change than by the risky proposition of co-conspiring with those calling for change. So yes, big disclosure coming here. I'm biased. I am biased. Much more inclined to believe that hope for our shared community, for our larger community, for our liberating religion, our nation, and our world, hope will appear far more often among the ones with the courage to hear and heed those who've been left out, left behind, left on the margins, and far less among the ones wanting to go back, trying to recover and reestablish the old order of things. A year before that young Brit shared his nostalgic yearnings in Yesterday, a soulful singer born in Mississippi, raised in Chicago, shaped by the gospel music of his father's Holiness Church, recorded a very different kind of song. His song was prompted not for a longing for what had been, but by a specific experience. He was turned away from a whites-only Holiday Inn in Shreveport, Louisiana, and then he was arrested later that night. So his song doesn't appeal to the past. Instead, in that angelic voice, Sam Cooke sings, "Oh, there have been times that I thought I couldn't last for long. But now I think that I'm able to carry on." He's not heading back to Egypt, pining for the old days, for the old ways. He's continuing right into the desert wilderness, singing. It's been a long time coming. But I know a change is going to come. Oh, yes, it will. Oh, yes. It will. With everything I am, I say, may it be so.
This reading is by Frederick Buechner from Peculiar Treasures. It was still dark when Mary Magdalene went to the tomb to discover that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance and that inside it was empty as a drum. Mary stayed on outside the tomb someplace and started to cry. 2 angels came and asked her what she was crying about, and she said, "Because they have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." She wasn't thinking in terms of anything miraculous, in other words. She was thinking simply that even in death, they wouldn't let him be, and somebody had stolen his body. Then another person came up to her and asked the same questions. Why was she crying? What was she doing there? She decided it must be somebody in charge, like the gardener maybe. And she said if he was the one who had moved the body somewhere else, would he please tell her where it was so she could go there? Instead of answering her, he spoke her name, Mary. And then she recognized who he was. For Mary Magdalene, the only thing that had changed was that for reasons she was in no state to consider, her old friend and teacher and strong right arm was alive again. "Rabboni," she shouted, and was about to throw her arms around him for sheer joy and astonishment when he stopped her. Noli me tangere, he said, touch me not. Don't hold on to me, thus making her not only the first person in the world to have her heart stop beating for a second to find him alive again when she thought he was dead as a doornail, but the first person also to have her heart break a little to realize he couldn't be touched anymore. Wasn't there any more as a hand to hold on there when the going got tough, a shoulder to weep on, because the life in him was no longer a life she could know by touching it, with her here and him there, but a life she could know only by living it.
The scene has intrigued artists for centuries. The images vary widely. The title they carry is the same, Noli Me Tangere. Each of these works of art show two figures, a woman usually kneeling, arms outstretched, reaching up longingly, lovingly, and a man standing who, in one way or another, is rebuffing her. Here in works, medieval and modern, are two characters from the story that Julie just read, Mary Magdalene and Jesus. She's come to the tomb where the rabbi had been buried, discovers his body missing, is alone in the dawn's misty light, grieving. In her anguish, apparitions appear, angels and then a gardener. He questions, why are you weeping? Whom do you seek? She snaps back, suggesting that perhaps he is the body snatcher who has made off with the corpse of her beloved teacher. He calls her by name, Mary. And in one of the poetic twists of this tale, she then recognizes him as Jesus, Rabbi. Then, just as she is about to embrace him, Jesus insists, Noli Me Tangere, which is to say, don't hold on to me. In one miraculous moment, she has him back, but no sooner does she delight in his reappearance than he is telling her, don't hold on to me. What kind of cruel turn is this? The ecstasy of presence become the agony of rejection. Perhaps it's the intensity of this emotional conjunction that intrigues artists, some effort to capture the confusing contradiction of it all, delight then denial in the span of one single phrase, Noli Me Tangere. We have to use our imaginations to tap into this tale, suspend disbelief, approach it as if it were a myth or a movie, or if you prefer, a grand work of art. We enter it in the early light of our own imagining, open to the possibility that generations of artists just might be onto something. This is a story about letting go. One touting independence over dependence, freedom over frailty, the choice to live with open arms instead of closed fists. Mary Magdalene had her rabbi, her spiritual guide. He had shown her the way, and now it was time for her to stand on her own. No longer some passively vicarious recipient, convinced that the truth would come from outside of her. Life was demanding that she now go and live for herself. Notice carefully, the story is about relinquishing that which is, or at least that which has been life-giving. It's about letting go when it really hurts to do so. There's a parent here who can bear witness. How much you wished you could cling and grasp, delay independence just a little bit longer. How life said to you, Noli Me Tangere, and how you let her, you let him, you let them go, proud of their maturity while grieving what would forever be lost. There's someone here who can speak to this professionally. You had a good job. It gave you status, security, comfort, and life said to you, Noli Me Tangere. It scared the daylights out of you to let go. I'm just guessing. Not really knowing what might lie ahead. And yet you did so anyway. For someone here, it came in the form of a move, the painful, wrenching choice to relocate fully. Not just physically, but also emotionally, to a new city, a new community, a new way of life. relinquishing old ties, not knowing if you would ever feel at home again, and doing it anyway. For someone here, it might have been a long-held dream. It might have been a relationship. It might have been some defining self-understanding. For someone, it might have even been a diagnosis or an addiction or a wound or loss or some old attitude or defense mechanism. Something you'd lived by, something you defined yourself as, drawn life from. It became your favored excuse. Whatever it was, that unrelenting voice kept calling, insisting, noli me tangere, stop holding on to what is now holding you back. And you risked another way. Though it felt hard and sad and confusing, and at least initially not life-giving at all. Were some artists to render your life right now, what would you be shown trying to hold on to? Reluctant to let go of? What voice clamoring for your attention, speaking in some still small way, invading your dreams or perhaps your anxieties, is trying to tell you it is time for you to stop holding on. You must now let go. Resurrection, new life comes like that sometimes, not with trumpets and hallelujahs, but through letting go. Choosing risky freedom over safe predictability. Choosing hope instead of a sure thing. Noli me tangere. Loss and possibility woven tight. Letting go for dear life.
Welcome. My name is Julie Smith, and my pronouns are she, her. We're happy you're with us today in this room or joining us remotely. We're pleased to have guests with us in this room and participating through our live stream. Our members would like to greet those of you who are here following the service. So if you're visiting, please raise your hand and keep it up. Members, take note of guests seated near you and invite them to join you for coffee and conversation when the service ends. If you're visiting us by way of our live stream or viewing an archived version of the service, we'd like an opportunity to connect with you. reach out to our membership coordinator, Kelly Green. You can email her at kelly@uuccharlotte.org. Should it enhance your experience of future services, we offer large print orders of service, personal hearing assistance devices, and have an elevator available as well. Welcome to each of you, visitor and member alike. In reflecting back on times of letting go in my life, many were my choice, but quite a few were initiated by circumstances or by others. All these experiences granted me the opportunity to move forward. As many of you may have experienced, our daughter chose to study abroad her junior year in college. Letting her go so far away was an emotional decision for me. She was very aware of my feelings, and she handled it beautifully. She gave me a small globe with this quote from Oscar Wilde: "To live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist, that is all." And she offered this acknowledgement: "Thank you for allowing me to live life to its fullest." And she put a heart on Vienna so I'd know where to find her. This experience fortified her independent spirit and enriched her confidence. And it did the same for me. Letting go of our children allows them and us the freedom to become our own selves. A few years ago, my mother, brother, and I were meeting with a caregiver, discussing the criteria for hospice care for my father. It became clear that he did not meet the criteria. This was confirmed when he wheeled his walker into the room and had a coherent conversation with the caregiver about where she lived. Always the first question for my architect father. Then he asked her, "Are we going to heaven or hell?" Without hesitation, she said heaven. He questioned her again, "Are you sure?" She answered yes, and he said, "Well, then let's go." So he did. He passed away in his sleep that night. Her reassurances gave him the peace and courage to let go. Over the years, my life has been enriched by family, friends, coworkers, and strangers. But I've come to realize there are a few people who only bring negativity to our interactions. And though it's tough to do, I have learned to step away. Letting go of toxic relationships has helped me to take care of myself and brighten my life. In recent years, I started each day walking with a friend. We left our houses at 6:15 with the goal of walking 5,000 steps before breakfast. Connecting with each other was a beautiful way to start the day. Then she retired, and for some inexplicable reason, she decided not to get up at 6 each morning. This change in circumstances caused us to let go of our treasured morning walks, but did encourage us to find other ways to connect. May we all find the courage to let go.
What a wealth of musical riches we are experiencing today. We thank once again our wonderful director of music, John Herrick. Thank you so much. We thank our very robust and faithful adult choir. Amazing. Thank you so much. We also welcome 3 musical guests. Welcome back to our longtime friend, Karen Record on piano. Always great to see you there. Welcome Katie Kilroy, who is our percussionist today. And a hearty welcome back to you, Amos Fisher. So glad to hear you on clarinet. And if you heard Donna Fisher clapping a little louder than the rest of you, it's only because Amos is her son. Deep thanks to each of you. Following this service, I invite any visitors to grab a cup of coffee or tea in Freeman Hall across the way and then join me downstairs in our conference room for a brief conversation. I invite all of us to linger long today to greet someone that you don't know, to enjoy the opportunity to be back in Freeman Hall together. While there, please visit our adult programming table and sign up to participate in some remarkable upcoming opportunities. This week, we will begin a 2-session class called Voting Rights Under Fire. Voting Rights Under Fire is offered in conjunction with the League of Women Voters. Next week, we will launch our Movies That Changed My Life series. And next month, we're hosting a remarkable documentary and a talkback session on homelessness in Charlotte. You can sign up and show up by starting in Freeman Hall, where the table is. In a few moments, baskets will be passed up and down each pew. The financial contributions that are offered today will be shared, half in support of our community, half to help support the very important work of Green Faith. Raise your hand again, please. Director Amy Brooks, if you want to know about Green Faith, talk with Amy. Very important work these folks are doing. Last month, many of you voted with your dollars to support the work of Black Lives UU. We're sending a very robust contribution to those now challenging us to reimagine our liberating religion. As a community, we share in one another's joys and sorrows. So we're delighted today to join with Carol Hartley and Tom Cole and Sarah Cole and Patrick Cole, as Carol is being recognized and celebrated for her professional role at UNC Charlotte. Congratulations to you, Carol. We're similarly delighted they may be watching to celebrate the remarkable recovery of our member Bill Steppen from a very serious surgery. And we join with Abby and Colin Steppen and also with Sheila Gallinger in this wonderful news. Today we also extend sympathy to Sheila and Jim Lay and their family, now mourning the death of Sheila's sister, and to Eddie and Nancy Walensky and their family as they continue to mourn the death of Eddie's mother. We're mindful of health concerns for Tom Lee and for Doug C. and for others in our congregation who are facing daunting diagnoses or who are caring for those who are in difficult situations. The candles on the stands before you today marks an occasion of celebration, remembrance, or concern. You're invited to come forward and light a candle later in the service when the offering music is being played. We are a religion that honors the wisdom of the world's religious traditions. It is central to who we are. We find ourselves at the convergence, not just of 2, but of 3 sacred times, not just Passover for our Jewish friends and Easter for our Christian friends, but also Ramadan for our Muslim neighbors as well. It is in the spirit of Ramadan and in the longing for peace in Ethiopia, Palestine, Israel, Myanmar, Ukraine, that I now call us into a time of meditation. With words from Ibn Arabi, a 13th century Muslim mystic and philosopher. My heart can take on any form a meadow for gazelles, a cloister for monks. For the idols, sacred ground. Kaaba for the circling pilgrim. The tables of the Torah. The scrolls of the Quran. My creed. My creed is love. Wherever its caravan turns along the way, that is my belief, my faith. Assalamu alaikum.
As a community, we have the opportunity to craft what we want the UUCC to be. As we venture through this time of exploration, we ask that you give generously to support this community and the staff on this journey. If this is your pledge month, then your pledges are due today. Please join me in an affirmation of our faith, rising in body and or spirit. We know
don't look back pretending. Don't go back to what never can be again anyway. Don't hold on, grasp, or cling to what cannot liberate you or others. The way to freedom is up ahead. Go that way with courage, my friends. Go that way with courage. Please be seated.